My name is Anna Kim, and this is the video assignment for God Grew Tired of Us. Um, I really like this documentary. I always hear about like war-torn Sudan all the time, and I never, I guess, was motivated to look into it until I was forced to with this assignment. So, from the beginning, what we learned from this documentary is that when the British colonized Sudan, they basically treated the north and south part very differently. They treated the north in very Arabic influences, and then the south very, from what it seems like, very Christian influences. And so, in what they said in 1983, um, tensions grew so much that eventually it led to a civil war and an overthrow of the government, where the North just decided to just completely annihilate um, like all the people in southern Sudan, which meant everyone there um, decided to flee. Um, and during that time, there was some sort of government decree where they're like, we're going to kill all boys from 5 to 10, and not just kill, but completely like, sterilize them. Um, and so all these young boys got separated from their families and needed to flee Sudan for their lives. And it said like around 27,000 kids were fleeing from Sudan to Ethiopia. And and then once they got to Ethiopia, they thought they were safe, but then again, the government collapsed there, and so they had to flee again. And I mean, it's not a very short distance from what they're saying. It was like these young kids, no food, no family, walked hundreds of miles um, from Ethiopia to Kenya, and from that area is just complete desert. So there's like nothing for them to survive on. And what was first 27,000 kids now ended up being 12,000. And so when they reached Kenya, they international news um, it reached international news, and so they decided to intervene and set up this camp called Kakuma, and that's where all the boys, the lost boys, stayed and received help and aid. And yeah, this is really sad. And but the most amazing thing that I think is attributed by their culture, the Dinka culture, um, is how they were able to stay so happy and positive during everything that they've been through. And I know the second question asked what I learned about Dinka country. And it was a difficult question because the document doesn't basically list, oh, they speak this language, etc., etc. But when you finish the entire documentary, you basically get a feel of what their culture teaches these people. And and it's like even through their song, even through how they interact with each other, even when John Panther and Daniel go to the U.S., you just see this like unrelenting positivity, and I think that's part of their culture. Um, and one thing that they did mention is in the Kakuma camp is White House slash Parliament. It's the ability or the chance to have every single member be able to, voice their opinions and then also listen to how others are feeling and keep this positive energy going because when they receive rations for foods, there are times when they have to wait for a period of time, and the older members of the Kakuma camp take the responsibility to make sure to, keep everyone happy and positive. Um, and so I think that's like the biggest thing I realized about their culture. Um, let's see. Um, So, like I mentioned, there's three people: Daniel, Panther, and John, that are allowed to travel to the U.S. and resettle there. And I did some more research about it, and so you have to be an orphan, like a known, like you haven't, you basically, well, you'll find out later that John reunites with his family, but for a long time he didn't think they were alive, and uh, they were super ecstatic about being able to start a brand new life in the U.S., but they noticed a lot of stark differences between um, their culture and the U.S. culture. And one is that made them a little bit depressed is about how um, in Kakuma or just in Sudan in their villages, they would just go from house to house and they would know everyone. And if someone was sad, they go help. But um, like I noticed that here in the U.S. too is like people just ignore people. Like if they see someone upset, they don't want to get involved. And I guess that's like something. And another thing is like they believe in a community, like a very tight knit community. And community isn't just a word where they live; it's about how they interact with each other and how um, they make sure that they support one another together. And I guess it's like when they went to the U.S. and they were placed into their apartments, um, it felt weird and lonely to them that they had this you know Monday through Friday jobs. They come home late. They do the exact same thing over and over again, and then they lose this feeling of camaraderie with their brothers, um, which was like really interesting to see because I grew up in the U.S. and I always say, oh, I like my community in like I grew up in Sacramento, but it's not to the extent of what these young men um, grew up with. Um, and it's very another thing that made me happy was how excited they were about every little thing. Like when they were like, "Oh, what is this?" and it was like a cucumber. They never seen anything like it. Um, like potato chips. They're eager to learn how to work at electricity. And one of the comments was like, "Oh, I have to learn how to do it," and they thought it would be something difficult, but they soon realized it's like an on and off switch. Um, and another thing is like they were very eager to work. Like working hard isn't something that you know they're like, oh, we work hard so much. It's something that they're proud of. They're proud of having a job. They're proud of making money. They're proud of being able to um, give back to their country, and um, that's another thing that I really admired a lot is their pride. Um, let's see. The one of the questions that we were asked is uh, the community building strategies that they had, and I think one of them was always trying to get together. And towards the end of the documentary, you see that John makes it his responsibility to gather all the lost boys that were resettled in 20 something states in the US and make sure that they get together, they stay focused, and they never forget home, which is Sudan. And that was something that I admire a lot. And I think about too about my culture being Korean, how I should remember to not lose it when I come to to the U.S. and while I live here too as well. Um, another question that was asked is, well, I touched up on it about responsibility and John after he finds out that his family is still alive, he decides to, uh, you know, try to make contact and decides to leave school, which he's really looking forward to, and just make a lot of money so that he can eventually bring them back home. And also, he gives a lot of his money back to the Kakuma camp to make sure that his young brothers um, and sisters are, doing well back home as well. And the the biggest thing I got from this is how much me and a lot of people who live in um, privileged countries take things for granted. Um, I don't know if it's because we've never endured the things that they've endured, and but and part of me believes it's their culture, like the like how close knit the community is. And one thing I can kind of compare it to is, so I was visiting New York, and I was talking to a friend, and they're saying like after 9/11, after the city went through such like a terrible, terrible experience, he felt like the community in New York City um, was a lot closer. Like they feel like it's their responsibility to keep the city safe. And I guess I don't know how where I can pinpoint it, but I guess trials and tribulations bring a community of people closer. And let's see, I want to make sure that I answer all the questions. But yeah, like I really, really enjoyed this documentary. Um, I think there's lots to learn about acculturation, um, how hard it is, and to relate it to the current times with, um, you know, people being really against refugees coming here. Um, I think it's important that we know where these people come from and what they endured. And, we think, oh, we're doing them such a good favor to just bring them over. But it's not just that. It's their culture dissimilarity is a huge burden for these people that come to the US. And I think it's important that we acknowledge it, and that, yeah, we can help as much as possible. And it's like, how can you deny help to these people, to these young men who've gone through so much? And so I think it's important, not just through this class. I think everyone should watch this video and and be more aware of what's going on, not just where you live. So